Good evening, everyone. Our top story today, we are going to be talking about all of the critical players heading into week one that are kind of questionable for a variety of different factors. So it may be CMC with his calf strain, or we're going to talk through CeeDee Lamb's contract, Chase's contract, Aiyuk's contract. There's so much influx that really is going to be impacting how we're drafting in fantasy. So we're going to talk about all of that. And also, this is going to be my last show of Player Profiler today in this time slot. But don't be scared. Don't be upset. This is going to be replaced with me doing the show at the same spot, same channel. But it's going to be really moving into like more critically what we're talking about in the football season. So obviously this is a Sunday show. The biggest news of every Sunday moving forward is going to be the NFL games. And so what we do during the season typically, and we started it last season, is a show called Hits and Misses. So me and a really special guest who's going to be joining us at the end of the show are going to be talking through the most critical, impactful plays of fantasy. Honestly, it's supposed to just feel like a vent session with you and your boys. We're going to have some stats, but it's really going to be us venting like, bro, why the hell did so-and-so fumble 3 times? Like, what's going on with these kickers? Like, it's going to be that type of show. So we're going to give you a little bit of a preview of that at the end, but we're going to talk about all of that and all these critical player injuries and contract updates on Player Profiler today. All right, guys. So I'm going to talk through the most important player, I'd say, in fantasy first, which is CMC. What's up, man? What's up? I'm gonna add. I suck. Like, so there's so many people who are so much smoother at putting up a comment as they're talking. I'm not that, so I hope you've grown to love my lack of understanding technology sometimes. But what's up, Jamie? All right, so CMC. Thursday, he started doing some work on the side field. So he was working on the side, doing his typical warm-up routine, and he did some light running as well. CMC also said himself that if he had to play, if we had a game to play today, I would play, he said. I don't even know how I jack up a quote that I'm reading, but that's what CMC said. So if he was healthy, he's going to go. And so I'm not concerned about CMC playing week one. There are some people who are concerned about his injuries, me, but I'm not concerned about him being ready to go the first week of the season. Obviously, he hurt his calf earlier in training camp, but yeah, he said he's going to be ready to go. And we all know when CMC is ready, he is that guy. When CMC is healthy, he is that dude. So obviously, last year, he was over 100 points better than the RB2 last year, which was Brees. Over 3.5 points per game better than the RB2 per game, which was Kyron. 1,400 rushing yards, 272 carries, second most in the NFL. He had 83 targets, which was nuts. Nearly 600 receiving yards and another 7 touchdowns to pair with the 14 that he had on the ground. Completely just dominant, no matter what. If CMC is healthy, and even me is kind of, I feel like I'm one of the lower guys on CMC, but I will even admit, if he is healthy, RB1, easy. That's not even a question. RB1, easy. But it's the health. The health is the health for me. If you guys give me a follow on TikTok, I go by FF Strategist. Make sure you guys check us out there. And obviously, it goes without saying, if you're watching this live stream, you should be following Player Profiler News, but also Player Profiler, like the mothership on YouTube. We have content for every single type of fantasy player you are. So if you're not following us there, I think you may be like losing out on potential winnings, and you like best ball, FFPC, like all these different types of contests. We got a pro for that. That should be our slogan. We got a pro for that. We got a show for that. So make sure you guys are tapped in and subscribed to know when we go live with these shows, because there's always going to be something going live. Like every time you check YouTube, I promise you, Player Profiler is going live in some form or fashion. But all that to say, for CMC, I've been a little low on him because of his injury. And not just this calf strain, but I do think that this was the football gods trying to give us a message to say, hey, man, just think about it this year. I'm not mad and cursing it or anything. It's just like the calf strain is just a little precursor. Like, you should back away from CMC at the 101. Last year, he had the most amount of touches his entire career with 417. And that was the most in the NFL, obviously. I just think that he is kind of at a tough position to be dealing with that much work. The last time he had anywhere close to that amount of touches It was when he was 23, and the next season he missed 13 games. And then also, if you just look at like running backs at his age who've had that much work the previous season, what happened the next year, 5 of 7 of them missed 8+ games the next season. And these aren't scrubs. This is AP. This is Arian Foster. This is Derrick Henry. These are players like studs of studs. And so to think that, oh, CMC, he's just built different. Like, I sometimes think that we got to start to read the tea leaves before they like smack us in the face. Okay. All right. So I also, I wasn't on last week because we did a fantasy football expo in Canton, and I was there like chatting it up with the player profiler guys, interviewing like a ton of people. So again, make sure you guys give us a follow there because we interviewed a lot of the shows you probably watch on YouTube as it relates to fantasy and some of the bigger shows too. But one guy there, he's from the injury experts. His name is Jesse Bates. I want to say it's Jesse Bates. Jesse Morse. Oh my gosh. It's Jesse Morse. I wrote it down. I was trying to remember it. But he's like, you've probably seen him on Twitter everywhere. Whenever there's an injury, I feel like his videos are always one of the first ones to come up. And so I asked him about a couple players. I asked him about Herbert. I asked him about Marquise Brown. And I asked him about CMC. And he shared the exact same sentiment with me. But obviously, I don't have a medical degree. So we explained it about the gastrocnemius and the medial part not getting as much blood supply. I'm not going to repeat what he said because I'm not a doctor. But needless to say, he's concerned about potential re-injury. He's concerned about just the healing is just kind of tough because you literally use that part of your calf every single time you like walk, and re-injury is a real concern. So those are some of the reasons why I'm just a little standoffish around CMC. So again, my headline on the CMC thing is CMC is going to be the RB1 when he's healthy, but I just don't think he's going to be healthy for a full season this year. And so I'm out on CMC at his current ADP. That's a tongue twister. Again, I think like week 1, he's going to be RB1. I'm probably going to rank him as my RB1. He's playing the Jets, which is tough, but I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to be the RB1. But at some point, we just may lose him to injury. So to me, again, it's either they're going to overwork him like they typically do, and he may just go down with injury, or they're going to really scale back his touches. And then you're, again, starting to lose like the top-end CMC production because this is a team who wants to be playing in January, and they understand that they just overworked a 27-year-old running back who's going into he's actually age 28 right now, had the most amount of touches in his career, and like you don't want him to start to fall apart. So it would behoove them to manage his work. And if they're going to manage his work, that just takes the top running back overall upside away from him. Because again, while he dominated last year, and he's dominated the year before, I just think that at some point it does come for everyone. Age is a bitch. It's going to come for everyone, and it's going to just I think it's going to take us out at some point. So, I mean, I got a crutch right here. I just rolled my ankle. Like, it happens to everyone. And I just worry about him not achieving that this year. One other thing, and I'm going to I feel like this is almost a hotter take, but it is related to CMC. Oh, you were at the expo? Oh man, I mean, I don't know what you look like, Jamie. I just see a Browns dog. Oh yeah, so I guess you're maybe a Browns fan. Damn, I would have hit you up if I knew you were there for sure. And I'll be going there next year. So if anyone's interested in the Fantasy Football Expo, it's in Canton, Ohio. Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think it's this time every year. It was last week. So yeah, if you guys show up to that, let me know and I'll pull up and I'll say what's up. But my hot take about the 49ers, it would not surprise me if they had a down year. Not like Super Bowl slump, like that's just the reason for it. I just think that there's a lot of factors that are kind of weird this year. Obviously, to me, if I'm predicting that CMC is going to miss some time, I think that's going to have a big impact on the overall wins for that team. Also, I expect Brandon Aiyuk to sign. We're going to talk about that contract in a couple of segments, but there's a world where he doesn't. And if Brandon Aiyuk doesn't sign, that's a big hit to that passing game. And again, we all see the CMC runs. Like, he's a great blocker too, so that's going to have an impact. Trent Williams is not signed. I mean, he's not showing up yet either. That is probably the biggest concern to me outside of CMC's injury. They got to get him signed. He's the best left tackle in football, and I know that they're kind of waiting on the Aiyuk deal to get done, but you got to get that done because that is a big factor. And then I also think that Ricky Pearsall doesn't seem like he's going to be ready. Or Shanahan hopes he's going to be ready for week 1, but it's not a guarantee. Kittle's still kind of coming back, trying to gain all that weight that he lost this offseason. You never know whenever the hell Debo's going to miss some time. And then that defense, I think they're like instead of them being a top 2 unit, it's possible that they're like a top 12 unit. I mean, you look at what they lost. I mean, I think that Wilkes kind of got a raw deal. Armstead, you just look at players like EPA when they're on and off the field. Him not being there is a major deal. That's a big deal. Eric Armstead now being on the Jaguars. And obviously, Nick Bosa, as long as he can stay healthy, he's a problem. But I mean, Hufanga, he just got cleared to start cutting on the field. So I don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1. Like, you're missing a lot of pieces. You're changing defensive coordinators. Like, this is not a guarantee that this defense is going to be all that. And so would it surprise me if this is a team who has, I mean, if they're 10-7, would it surprise me? No, that's still a good year. But for people to think that they're going to be like 13-3, I think it's like, I said 10-7, like 10-6. No, 10-7 or 13-4 or something. I think that that's a little overzealous. I think that they're going to be solid this year. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I just don't think that they're going to win the NFC if some of these things come to fruition. All right, let's see. Everyone give this video, if not for great content, at least make his rolled ankle feel better. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate that, bro. That's what's up, man. It was there was just a hole in my yard that I think a gopher dug, and I just biffed it, just right in it. But I was kind of like, my wife had just gotten home, and she just looked at me as like, man, you need to get up, so stop crying. All right, y'all, we're going to talk about all these other stories. I'm going to get into CeeDee Lamb, especially on the other side of this break. But I know there's a lot of people drafting. There may even be some people drafting right now. You guys need to know about one of the best tools that Player Profiler has.
Hey, it's the Podfather. I have great news. The draft kit is live. It is world famous. Why? Because it is the best resource for winning fantasy football championships that exists. There are rankings and cheat sheets for every format you can imagine. We have projections both at the team level and the player level. And wherever you are, you can click on a player, open them up, and see in-depth written analysis about what to expect in fantasy football from that player this year. And then you can click on the team, and you can get even more in-depth analysis, all the drivers of fantasy production, both in a positive and negative direction for that team, including a signature trend. And the graphics are incredible. So these team insights, they give you the team-level projections, the vacated targets, the vacated ARs. And we added a bunch of features. I mean, individual cheat sheets for Theo and Billy and Dario. So you could take your favorite analyst and download their personal draft cheat sheet. And then in the commissioners section, Memphis Young lays out everything you need to know to manage a league. The best minds in the industry contributing analysis. It's certainly not the most inexpensive draft kit on the market, but it is the best. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. Go get it.
Go get it, man. And I mean, he said it's not the most inexpensive, but I've seen it. I know we've all seen as fantasy guys, like, there's way more expensive ones than that. And I mean, to get this draft kit with all of this different input from all these experts who are just renowned in the industry, like, definitely cop that draft kit, especially if you're drafting in the next week or within the next hour. All right, so next, we're going to be moving on to CeeDee Lamb. So previously to me, CeeDee Lamb was, and he still is my wide receiver 1 overall. But it's definitely getting scary now. Like, the fact that we're still not having that much movement is a concern. But there was some recent stories, so we'll just talk through that real quick. According to the Dallas Morning News, sources told the site that Lamb and the Cowboys are currently in limbo as the franchise is offering a deal slightly under $33 million per year. And that happened, I believe that came out yesterday. The deal would approximately be worth $132 million. I think that's for 4 years, yeah. And it's definitely shy of the $140 million deal that Justin Jefferson got with $110 guaranteed. But the biggest number, I think that's the sticking point for CD, is the fact that Jay Jettas got $35 million a year. CeeDee Lamb, this contract was reported to be under $33 million a year. And I get it. Like, objectively, Justin Jefferson is a better player than CeeDee Lamb in my eyes. But that's just not how the market works. And so I'm just that is a concerning offer from the Cowboys. If you are truly going to be offering them, this man, $2.5 million less than the highest deal on the market, I do not understand what the plan is there. Like, I don't understand what the plan is there. Like, yes, Justin Jefferson is better. We all understand that's not how this works. Like, you're next up, you get the next most. That's just what it is. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks who are getting paid better than Patrick Mahomes, but they're not better than Patrick Mahomes. Like, we get, like, it just is what it is, and that's a quarterback. We're talking about a wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb clearly, like he had stated in the past, or it was reported that he wanted to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. I think Stephen Jones had kind of walked back those comments saying he never said that, but to not offer him at like not even closer to 35 is really wild to me per year. That's really odd to me. I know we've had a lot of back and forth with Jerry Jones and this team, but I do think that they're kind of like playing with fire now. Jerry Jones will do anything to win a championship except pay his players, which is funny. Like he actually in the past has paid his players a ton, and it feels like this is like, I don't know why you're going to wait this long to pay 3 guys. Now Parsons, I don't think he's getting paid this year, but Dak, like I don't think you're going to let him walk. And then maybe you are, but you're just taking so long to get this stuff done. Like you're not going to not pay CD. And so at this point, we're kind of getting to a point where it's really concerning from a fantasy perspective. It's making you really think, like, is he going to truly get paid prior to week 1? We all know Jerry Jones a week or so ago said he has no urgency to get a deal done. And CeeDee Lamb replied on social media with LOL. When asked to provide an update on the contract situation, I think the VP, Stephen Jones, said that the contract talks are ongoing. And Jones said that is a challenge for the team to figure out CeeDee Lamb's contract. I don't know, man. Like it's just kind of getting crazy now. There was a big quote from Micah Parsons. I'll just read that, but then I'll just give you my take on what to do with him in fantasy. So this is from Micah Parsons. It's a little bit more optimistic. We have our talks. But at the end of the day, me and CD and all of us, we kind of know what it is. CD is a part of the brotherhood, whether he likes it or not. He knows he's not going anywhere. The business side, they're going to take care of him, but obviously we miss him. Parsons said of Lamb via Todd Archer of ESPN. I mean, he's one of the best people you can have in the locker room, and I'm pretty sure he'll be here soon. All right, so I don't really take too much from that comment. I just want to make sure you guys heard it. That sounds great. That's from a player who has he's getting his contract negotiated too, but I don't think that really means that much. Hopefully CD is going to be coming back soon, but I guess this is the headline for me. I do think that CeeDee Lamb is going to get a new deal, but it's very possible that we do not get that deal before week 1. I would not be surprised if we see a Chris Jones style of a situation where, you're just going to miss me for a week and see how that goes, where you're going to just let the Browns, because they're going to be on the road at the Browns with that defense. They may get smacked up. And you're going to just kind of let that simmer and then come back the following week. And so as that's the case, it's hard for me to really push for CeeDee Lamb to be previously the number 101 for me. Like he was a number 1 player overall. If he had been in camp the full offseason and there was no issues with any contracts, he would be the 101 for me. Like I think that he would definitely be the safest bet in fantasy. But because of this, I just can't do it. I can't recommend it. Like I have a little bit more of a risk averse sense, so I could probably still do it. But I do think that you just need to just pay attention to this contract dealings. Let's say you're drafting tonight or tomorrow or sometime like soon, I probably would shy away from him at the 101 and go with my next best player. For me, I'm going to go with Breece Hall. But if you say it's CMC, then I would just do that. Like I wouldn't recommend it, but just go with the next guy at your 101 because that is just a very risky pick, especially since if you have the 101 or one of those high picks and going to take CD, you don't pick for a minute, especially in like a 12-plus team league. So you really just got to like kind of think through what your strategy is there. And CD may just be a little bit too risky for that. He's been dominant over those last 2 years. I mean, he's been amazing. How many yards? He got like I don't know why I copied this carries. I don't even know how many yards. I think he had 1,700 yards last year. And the depth chart outside of him is pretty bad. Like you got obviously Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert. Like there's not a lot of big names out there. I think that CD is due for a 30+% like target share type of year. But until he signs, he's not signed. And so, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think that he's been training. He's going to be physically ready to go. He actually, if you look at some of his training videos, he looks like way bigger up here. Like he looks way bigger up top. I think he gained 14 pounds of muscle. It feels like it was all in his arms. But he's moving well. Like he's clearly ready to go. So if they sign him, I'm not concerned about him coming in and lighting it up from day one. But I do think that we're at a danger zone now with the contracts, especially when you consider the amount of contracts that they're juggling at the moment. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Tyreek got more money just just for being good, but CeeDee is just left on the couch, putting up emojis on Twitter. I'm drafting a tournament IDP, Superflex. All right. Good luck with that, Jamie. And then not great for the offense to be ready and humming for week 1. Yeah, I agree with the offense overall. I just think that CeeDee, he's going to just get a million targets, and he's a good player, so he'll just make something work. All right, so that's CeeDee. So let's talk through the next receiver whose contract is kind of in limbo right now. And that next player is Ja'Marr Chase. I haven't really talked a ton about Ja'Marr Chase this offseason. I always try to be honest with, like, whenever I give fantasy opinion, that's just a guy I typically don't draft. And so I like to just let you guys know if I have, like, it seems like a negative opinion of them in, like, a high part of the first round, I probably just have some sort of, like, anti-Chase bias. I just don't like relying on him giving me 50 points this week, but then kind of falling off the face of the earth the next week. So that's just my personal bias. Even the way I said that, you can tell I'm kind of biased. All right, but Ja'Marr Chase, I do think that this tone of discussion is a little different from what we saw with the Cowboys. And while I do think it's a little bit more positive, I actually don't think he's going to get a deal this year. But he's younger, so he doesn't. I mean, he technically isn't even up for his contract just now. So we know we're dealing with the Bengals, man. The Bengals, Mike Brown, notoriously cheap. No matter who it is, they're just cheap. And them paying a player early is just not their MO. Like, that's just not what they do, especially when they just paid Burrow. It's just, it was kind of surprising that he even tried this, but I'm glad he tried it at least. But yeah, it's not happening. Let's see. So, unlike CeeDee Lamb, Chase is actually reported in the camp. He's just not practicing. And so, CeeDee Lamb's actually been getting fined every day. Ja'Marr Chase is not getting fined. He's just not practicing. The owner earlier this year, the owner / GM, Brown, he alluded to the fact that a deal is not happening this year. And it does seem like he's just going to have to play on this base salary. He's going to make $1.1 million this year. I mean, I think he's just going to have to do that. If you look at what they've done in the past, even for like players as great as A.J. Brown, here's what it is. So the team waited just until A.J. Brown's 5th season to pay him back in 2015. That's the same exact situation here. I just don't think they're going to pay Ja'Marr Chase before his 5th season. The fact that they just did the franchise tag with T. Higgins, the fact that they just gave Burrow that much money, I think it's like pretty much a guarantee that he's not going to get paid. And at least it was interesting because it does seem like Chase is kind of not fine with it, but kind of accepting of it. So where's the quote? Yeah, so this is from, I think it's from ESPN. Or no, it's from SI.com. So the Bengals would rather address this matter in 2025. But Albert Breer offered that Chase may ultimately be okay with that route as well. So yeah, so to me, if you're thinking about Ja'Marr Chase, my headline here is he's not going to get a deal. He's at least at camp. He's like understanding what the installs are happening, and he's physically in shape. So I do think that he's going to be great. And however high you think of Ja'Marr Chase, I think you could still have that in your head. I personally just don't think he could be the number 1 overall wide receiver, but I don't think I think it's not anything related to this contract. I think he's going to just show up and play and be good and give you a great fantasy season. It does seem like, again, like they're not going to pay him until next year. He's been in constant communication, obviously, with his boy, Justin Jefferson, and it does seem like he's going to get a deal, trying to get a deal at least structured in that manner. And then when you really just think about it, like Justin Jefferson just got paid, CeeDee Lamb's going to get paid this year, Aiyuk's going to get paid to me, I think. You can really go crazy next year and dominate way higher over them if you wait another year. So I just think like that's clearly the route this is going. So I don't think this is maybe as contentious as some people may think. Like he's going to play this year, and he's likely going to play week 1, unlike CeeDee where it may be a little bit more in question. Yeah, so looking at his stats, he was obviously like he's been a great player. His rookie season was his best year by far, but he's been objectively good. He's missed 6 games over his last 2 years, and I do think like there's just some factors to me that just kind of limit his overall upside. Again, really great player, not the one for me. He has not been anywhere close to as good as he was his first year. T. Higgins is always going to just cap him when he's there. It is what it is. T. Higgins is going to be a cap on his overall potential. And I do not want to sleep on like how good Jermaine Burton is and how much he's been flashing. And so I do think like those are some of the reasons why I may not be as high. Like some people are putting him as the 101. I can't do that. I have him behind Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, CD and Hill. Like I have him behind all those guys, and I obviously have him behind the running backs too. I like him. I think he could clearly give you bang out weeks, but he's never been super consistent. Like I think only outside of his first year, he's not been in the top 5 receivers. And so ranking them as a top 5 receiver just feels a little disingenuous. What's up, Mark? All right. Next story. There's something like in my I feel like I just hear like crackling. I don't know if I have like tinnitus or something. All right, next story. Brandon Aiyuk, let's go. All right, so Brandon Aiyuk, I do think that he's heading home to the Bay. I think he's going to get his deal done. So there's been a lot of like conversation with Brandon Aiyuk and John Lynch. It does seem like we're at least getting to a point where like we're gonna get a deal done. There's been some rumors of a deal being floated, but I think we're getting to the point where we're getting a deal done. Before I keep going, there's 85 people watching this right now. Every single person in here needs to click subscribe and like this video. You could even throw a comment either in the chat or in the comment of the videos. Hit me up with that. Make sure you support these types of places, man. Like we're trying to give you this type of content for free. The only way we could continue to do that is if you guys like subscribe and like and just help us with the YouTube algorithm, because that's how we could continue to promote this, continue to get hosts to do these shows, all that stuff. So make sure you guys support. Anyway, Brandon Aiyuk. Here's a quote from John Lynch. I'm going to just read it in full just so you get the context of what's going on. And my man, I'm going to put his comment up here real quick. I'm sorry I'm late chasing my 101. Hey, well, why not? That's your choice, man. Get your guys. I'm always a fan of go get your guys. All right, so here's the quote from John Lynch. It's been a long, arduous process and a hard journey. We started this early for whatever reason, haven't been able to get it across the finish line. That's been frustrating, but the communication has still been really good with Brandon and his agent, and we're trying to figure out a solution. I'm always hopeful. I'm an optimistic person by nature, so I'm always hopeful that we get there and get there soon. I can tell you we feel the urgency to have him. The season is approaching. And that's good to hear from the GM. I think he typically handles himself well when it comes to these types of contract negotiations, at least from like a PR standpoint. This has been all over the place. We saw how he felt after the Super Bowl. Brandon Aiyuk. We saw him like on a Pivot podcast show up in there with like Jaden Daniels, like talking to him, talking about how they don't want me there no more, like really doing all the stuff that you see in the contracts negotiations. But this one has been going on for a minute. Brandon Aiyuk, for those who forgot, he 1,300-yard receiver last year, 7 touchdowns, on their way to a Super Bowl appearance, and he's obviously was like upset in the fact that he did not have a target at the end of the game when Chris Jones was in Purdy's face. And so Brandon Aiyuk, great player. I think he is actually like a top 5 level receiver when he's like in a better situation where he's getting all the targets. The fact that he has to share, I don't think he's ever going to show that type of upside. But if he was in a situation where he was getting all the work, I do think that we would be talking about a top 5 receiver based on talent alone. And so with the 49ers, even though a lot of people are concerned, I'm not as concerned as everyone else. You think about like last year when they were negotiating Nick Bosa's contract. They actually let the contract discussions go all the way until the first week of the season. He got his deal done the week they played the Steelers. And so I would not be surprised if we see something similar to that this year. I think that they're going to just get this deal done. That's my headline for this. And from a fantasy standpoint, because of that, I'm perfectly fine with him showing up. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with getting Brandon Aiyuk at the back end of the second round, preferably in the third round. I mean, if he falls to the fourth, shit, take him there too. But I'm perfectly fine with that because this guy is a dog on the field. And like I keep saying, like I'm a little bit more concerned about the health of CMC this year. I do think that we can be dealing with some wear and tear injuries with this guy. And with that, what's going to happen? Like, let's say, I'm knock on wood, we don't want this to happen. I'm not wishing for injury. Okay, clearly, I'm not wishing for anyone else to be injured. But let's say CMC is injured. Brandon Aiyuk's going to go 8 shit. Brandon Aiyuk's going to go crazy. If he signs this deal and we deal with some CMC injuries, I think Brandon Aiyuk could have a better year than he did last year. So while his ranking continues to fall and his ADP continues to crash down, I'm taking that value anywhere I can. Like I love Brandon Aiyuk. We all know, I mean, Pearsall, he's still like, he is just not I don't know if he's going to be ready to go for a little bit. I could see his rookie season kind of being like not a wash, but we may not see Ricky Pearsall be as good as he will be this year, at least in the first half of it. So I think that we're sleeping on Brandon Aiyuk, y'all. All right, so last quick stories before I introduce our special guest and we talk about kind of what's going to happen with this time slot moving forward. Nick Chubb, he gave an interview on the sideline of the preseason game. It is very interesting to see how people like discern this interview because I think maybe it's like a Rorschach test. You kind of see what you want to see with it. I think when I read this, I saw a player who's clearly not playing week one still. Everyone else apparently outside of me thought, oh my gosh, this is so great. He's going to definitely play. But this quote, I'm just going to read you what Nick Chubb said. I feel good. Every day I come to work out. I move around and feel a lot better, Chubb said. Before addressing his return more directly, I do not have a return date in mind. One day at a time, just working on getting faster and stronger every day. What about that says I'm going to be playing in a football game week one? Obviously, he's getting better and stronger every day. But to me, I need to see him on the field doing football maneuvers. I understand, again, I saw him squatting nearly 600 pounds. That's really impressive. I can't do that. But that's not anything as it relates to like a football drill. I need to see him doing football maneuvers. I think that he is one of the most locked and loaded players who is going to start the season on the pup. And hopefully once he's back off the pup, you get something close to the Nick Chubb we've seen. But at this point in his career, it's also possible, even coming off of the pup, he may not be that player. So taking Nick Chubb in the 7th round, 8th round is just, I'm just not with that unless you guys got a crazy deep IR situation. But again, the 8th round is like a really critical spot to me, especially if you're going hero or zero RB. There's so many running backs there that are going to start and give you like a lot of work that I just would not hold up a spot for Nick Chubb when we do not know his status. We need to figure something out soon. All right, so next quick hits that came out of the preseason. And again, we're going to talk about the preseason more with my special guest. But Jaylen Warren, he left Saturday's preseason game against the Bills with a hamstring injury. If you guys have been following the show, I'm a big Jaylen Warren guy. This really sucks. There's no word yet on the severity of this hamstring injury, so hopefully they're going to do some sort of imaging if they haven't already on Monday, and we'll find out. But that does suck, man. This is a guy who was a dominant receiving running back last year, and I think in this Arthur Smith scheme, he's only set to get way more carries. Obviously based on Arthur Smith being at the top of the league in carries like every year, including when he was in Tennessee. And because of that and because of his efficiency, I think that he was like locked in for 1,000 yards on the ground, not including the amazing amount of receiving work that he does. So I do think that like this sucks so hard. Like if he's injured for a long time, I'll probably still buy any sort of dip in ADP, but it's definitely something like it hurts me. It hurts my feelings for sure because this guy is a dog. I think like, them not re-signing Najee on his 5th-year option, I feel like this is kind of his tryout year to show that I'm the guy. And if he doesn't get a chance to do that at the beginning of the year, it's going to hurt him. But this is a hamstring injury. I don't want you to think he tore his ACL or something. He'll be back probably at the beginning of the season, if not at week 1. So don't freak out too much by it. And again, I'm buying the dip on his ADP. Next story. The Raiders named QB Gardner Minshew as their starter. They just did that. I appreciate that, Jamie. That's what's up. I'm gonna put this comment. I'll put up any compliment. So you guys could keep coming with the compliments. But Gardner Minshew is the starting quarterback. So they decided he's the starter. He went 10-21 in this past preseason game, but I think the thing that was the kicker is that he didn't turn the ball over like Aiden O'Connell did. I'm sure we're gonna still see both quarterbacks, but I'm personally excited to see what's it called? I'm personally excited to see Devontae Adams with Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew at least supported Michael Pittman Jr. to the wide receiver 13 in PPR last year. Devontae Adams was wide receiver 10. I think he's better. I mean, I don't even think it shouldn't even be controversial. He's better than Michael Pittman Jr. So I think that I have him ranked as like right outside of my first round still because he's just one of those guys you don't want to overthink. I'm very happy for Devontae Adams' value that is going to be Gardner Minshew. Again, we'll likely see both quarterbacks, but at least to me, just objectively, better quarterback situation going into this year. If you compare it to last year, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think Gardner Minshew is better than him just straight away. last year's Aiden O'Connell. I think this year's Aiden O'Connell is going to be better than last year's version. So overall, better QB room. Bryce Young, incredible value. Meh. Yeah, I guess, yeah. I don't know what to expect from him. I like DJ a lot, so hopefully he's going to definitely show up for sure. All right, let's go. Last quick story. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't really have a lot of hot takes. And I want to just get to my special guest because he's just sitting there waiting patient. All right, Brian Callahan said that he expects DeAndre Hopkins to play week 1 against the Bears, and I think that's great. So DeAndre Hopkins, his ADP has been falling. I think he's like back end of the 9th round right now. You're getting him where you're getting like Christian Watson's, Jamison Williams, Cortland Sutton sometimes ahead of him. And so I do think I'm not the biggest D-Hop guy, but to think that he wouldn't have a slightly better rapport built with Will Levis already. And he, to me, is like he's a better receiver also than Calvin Ridley. I think that there's a great value there to take. So I'm jumping all over that for sure. All right. So like I said, it's my last day doing Player Profiler today. We're going to be doing something though in the same exact time slot on the same channel. And that show is going to be called Hits and Misses. And so that show, we talk about exactly what happened during that Sunday's games. And really, it's really just like a vent session with your boys. Like, we're just talking about the games. We got some stats, but we're really just kind of like, man, what the hell happened here? Like, oh my God, this guy went for 50 points and kicked me out of the playoffs, Amari Cooper. I'm not bitter. But like, we're going to be talking about stuff like that. And so on that show, it is way too much content for me to talk about that myself. So I'm going to bring in my boy, my childhood friend. He's a professional homie, my guy, my boy, Eric. So I'm going to add him to the stage if I could do this easily. There you go. Can you hear me, man? What's up? Back for another season. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing all right. The States right now, I feel like is on legendary mode for everybody who live out here. So it's been a little difficult, but I am certainly looking forward to some football to go ahead and clear up some headspace to go ahead and relax and unwind. Because, I won't get into it here. This is a football show, but boy,
yes, it is.
It's difficult out here.
kill the vibes real quick. But I will say, it is a good point. There's a lot going on in the world right now. Shut all that shit off. It's football season. Stay right here. Just stay right here. I don't care what you do. I don't care about any of that stuff outside of here. Stay here. It's football season, man. So let's just talk about football, bro.
Yeah, preseason. You know what I'm saying? I hear it's one of the names that a lot of people have been coming up with saying he's a rookie wide receiver. I'm hearing a whole bunch about Malik Neighbors. What are your thoughts on him? Just to go ahead and jump into it.
Yeah. So Malik Neighbors, man, he's a dog. He's a beast. He, to me, is one of the better yards after catch receivers we've seen in a while in the NFL draft. And I it's hard to look past Danny Jones yesterday. My boy, he was struggling now. I felt bad for him when he threw that ball right into like Petrie's stomach for a pick six. And I was like, God, I remember when we were in high school, I've seen better decisions by our JV quarterback. Like it was a bad choice. And so that's always going to be a factor. I do not think they're going to be a good team, no matter how much I'm sorry, Giants fans. Like, it's just not going to be it this year. But Dable, the one thing I love seeing was him with the play sheet, just like holding it up like this and calling the plays. If Dable is calling the plays like he was the year before when they went to the playoffs, I'm fine with it. And I think that Neighbors is going to get a ton of targets. And Dable just does a good job putting the ball in the receiver's hands so they could do something after the catch. And like I said, he's just one of the best we've seen in a while after the catch. He's great down the field. He just does a good job getting open. He showed some of it yesterday. He had a crucial drop, but really good player. Happy to get him in the 5th if I can. But you know me, like in all of our leagues, I'm high. I run higher on rookies than probably I should.
You are that guy. Because I would say I brought him up just because he's a rookie wideout that you heard a lot about. Of course, you don't hear him about his Marvin Harrison Jr. Like he is that guy. Everybody's talking about him. So I anticipate he'll go what I would consider much, much earlier. But I have been hearing a lot more people talking about Malik Neighbors. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that. But another name that you can't avoid, especially if you're watching the HBO show Hard Knocks, they've been heavy on Caleb Williams.
Boy, Caleb.
Are you a believer in Caleb Williams, especially given what he did this past week in the preseason. I've seen a whole lot of highlights of the pass he had to Odunze. I think that's how you pronounce it, as well as his scramble ability.
Hold on. I'm so sorry. Odunze.
Oh, my fault. I know how you are. Odunze.
Your brother right.
Odunze.
Come on now.
How he was able to just drop that ball in there over the scramble. So
yeah, it was good.
Would you say you are a Caleb Williams believer going forward?
That's a great question, man. So in many respects, I'm a Caleb Williams believer from an NFL standpoint. In fantasy, I don't know if I'm interested in that this year as my sole quarterback. Like if I went the route of getting Caleb Williams and then getting because Kirk Cousins falls a ton, and I think that offense is going to be great. I don't mind doing some sort of pair like that just to kind of cover my downside a little bit. But yeah, those plays were amazing, but we also kind of skipping past the 3 and outs he had prior to that. This was, exclusively Bengals backups. Like this wasn't like any start, like not one defensive starter was on the field. So I do just want to kind of let's take that into consideration. But again, these are NFL players. He did it. It was great. And I'm glad that the biggest thing that I took from that was he didn't crumble and that he kind of came back and still was like, nah, this is a preseason game. F that. I'm going to go score still in a game that doesn't matter, but he still cared that much. I like that. Again, overall NFL standpoint, I think he's going to be fine. I think he's probably going to at least get a Super Bowl someday. But in fantasy, I do worry about that because even on like some of the highlight plays, that scrambling around and shit, every now and then, defender's going to hit that ball out. He definitely didn't have a ton of picks in college, but he definitely is very confident in that arm. And in the NFL, cats are going to test that. These windows that look wide open, they're not going to be. So I still am projecting him to lead NFL rookie quarterbacks in turnovers. And so to me, you're going to get those amazing plays, but you're also going to get those turnover plays. So it's just, do you want to ride that roller coaster in a fantasy world? Me personally, I don't. I actually think he has some underrated rushing talent, but I'd rather take a Jaden Daniels. I have him higher in my rankings for fantasy quarterbacks.
Oh, interesting. You bring him up. He's on the docket. I'll bring him up a little bit later to see how you feel about him. But one of the other highlights,
how do you feel about Caleb? What are your
Caleb Williams? I'm actually watching a Hard Knock show. So when you mentioned the much smaller windows in the NFL, that's actually like one of the conversations they actually had in the show, because I guess initially in the practices they were kind of getting them a little bit. You anticipate that since you're like a rookie quarterback and you were going to against such a good secondary, because I think you got Johnson back there. So that's one of the top corners. Of course, he was teaching them a little something. But as far as how he was learning the game and applying that, I was like, okay, this guy does seem like he never got down on his confidence. I think that coach was able to go ahead and just show him exactly what he needs to do, explain that the windows were not as wide and as often as they are in college. And he's able to adjust to it. He has the talent to take advantage of it. So seeing it out there on the field and that being his WR3, presumably they're going to be working with, and being able to have the eyes to get that guy the ball. So you got to take into consideration what are his reads to even get to that particular player to drop the ball in there. So if the other guys who are his top guys, he didn't even get to them first, it means he can read the field very well, as well as have the talent, like you said, and scramble ability to drop the ball in there. So while the scramble, like the running ability, if he had that more on, display, it'd probably be a lot better, like you said, for fantasy perspective. But I mean, the ability to drop the ball in the way he did, and that would be his WR3, I was like, okay, this means it's probably a small indication of what he really shows as a really top-tier talent. He can probably just dot the ball all over the field when he really gets into the games coming into the season as it rolls along. So I was like, it definitely was a uptick on his stock, if you will, for sure.
I got you. Mm-hmm. All right. What's your next?
Another quarterback that we all know is that dude. He's probably the best one to unseat Tom Brady in the future. What do you think about his ability showing off the behind the back passes for Mr. Patrick Mahomes? Are you a fan of that being written to the game like that?
Like that is gonna get picked off, but whatever, man. You got the talent, you got all these rings, do what you need to do. That's a dumb play. I would just not be doing that. I would not be doing that in a real game. That feels crazy. It's a preseason, and I saw him do it in practice at Pacheco. Cool. But that play aside, because I think I don't know. See, they're gonna probably score a touchdown with it, I'm sure. I'm high on Patrick Mahomes. It's typical, like for you, like people to put like Josh Allen as QB1. Patrick Mahomes is my QB1 this year. I think that we get a year, not 50 touchdowns, but very similar to that first year he started, where they've been like very audible about how pissed off they've been about how teams played him last year. They played him short like he is some like scrub ass quarterback. They were like stacking the box to defend the run, and that team was very aware of that. And so that's why they've been so focused on the vertical attack. It doesn't seem like Rashid Rice is going to get suspended. Marquise Brown, his injury is actually kind of like a little concerning based on his size, but they do say like 4 to 6 weeks he'll likely be back within the first 3 weeks of the season. Xavier Worthy, I'm a big fan of him out of college. And then Travis Kelce, unless he suffers another hyperextended knee like he did before last year, he's going to have more than 5 receiving touchdowns. Like Patrick Mahomes only had 27 passing touchdowns last year. That's just not it. He never is that low. Like he's always in the 30s, 40s, or again, like he had that 51. So Patrick Mahomes is my QB1 is easy. Just that behind the back shit, you could do that on the 2-point conversion. I just wouldn't do that in real football.
Yeah, I was interested. I was like, man, they're so confident they wrote that into the playbook behind the back. Oh my God.
It's not real. I mean, it's not real. They had that guy Steele starting at running back. Like it's this preseason.
Understood. Well, you mentioned him already. It's another rookie quarterback. Do you think Jaden Daniels is next?
Yeah, I mean, I think like in fantasy, like I said, I have him over Caleb. Even if he's not as successful as Caleb is in his first year, I just think that he's a very calm presence in the pocket. Obviously, the rushing is a big deal for fantasy, and I do think he could tickle like 800 rushing yards, and that really helps you, especially 4-point for passing touchdown leagues. But his deep ball is very accurate too. And I think that Terry is a big beneficiary of that. I think that Terry's going to have his best year as a pro. People keep forgetting he never actually played with Kirk Cousins. And he's only played, unfortunately, like rest in peace, like Dwayne Haskins and like players like that who are just not that high level of a quarterback. Like this is the best quarterback he's ever played with again, which is kind of sad. And so I do think there's a world where Terry goes out and goes crazy. Jaden Daniels does an amazing job as year one. I think that their rushing game is going to be pretty solid. I'm big on Brian Robinson this year. And also from a fantasy perspective, again, not football, I think he's going to have to pass it a decent amount because I think Dan Quinn's going to help that defense. They got a lot of new pieces. I mean, they've been playing their starters a lot in these games. And I mean, I'm sorry. Like I need your starting corner to not get beat by River Craycraft in the end zone. Like that's just like you dropped it in a bucket on a 6'3" St. Juice corner. Like their corners are still struggling. Like when I remember when the Jets were having their joint practices, Garrett Wilson was playing around with those boys. It just felt like I just don't know if that defense is gonna be it still. Like I think their defense was so historically bad last year that whatever improvements they make, they're just gonna be bad now. They were on another level terrible, but that's only going to bode good things for their fantasy projections. Like it's going to be good.
Trash to bad. That's hilarious.
Just trash to like kind of not below average, just bad. They'll just be a bottom 12 unit.
It is what it is. So.
Yes, sir.
What I got next up here? My favorite team. What are your thoughts on the potential impact of Jonathan Brooks for my Carolina Panthers? I know he's got the injury and everything, but what do you think?
That's funny you asked that. And we'll wrap the questions on this one, but I have one more question for you after this, all right? But perfect. Jonathan Brooks, I'll talk about your team real quick, and then I'll talk about the fantasy. So it's tough one for Eric, man. He's been a Panthers fan. He's not been just like he's not a bandwagon guy, man. He's been there through the ups and downs on this. But Jay Brooks is a great pick. He's my favorite running back in the draft. And obviously he's coming off the ACL, so that's the biggest concern. Dave Canales said a few weeks ago he may be ready by week 3 or 4. We don't know if that's true or not, but let's just say that is. The fact that he wasn't ready for training camp was kind of concerning too. I think there's a world he starts the season on the PUP, and I think his ADP continues to like fall. He was previously going like 8th round, 9th round, 12-team leagues. Once his ADP starts to hit double digits to me, I want everyone listening, and everyone listening should be subscribing because we're going to be giving you these types of tips throughout the season. Snag him. Snag Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks is going to be a tough one to have on your roster probably for the first few weeks of the season. If he starts the season on the PUP, you at least can put him in your IR spot, but if he's ready by week 3 or 4, technically, you wouldn't put him on that because that's a 4-game like holdout, and if he's ready by week 4, then he wouldn't get on that. So it's just going to suck. He's going to be sitting on your bench, not giving you anything. Once he starts to play, he's obviously going to be splitting with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. And he's also going to still, he's coming off an ACL, so he's not going to look great. But once he starts clicking in, which I think is going to probably be around like week 8 or so, I think you got league-winning potential in this Canales scheme where they overload the running back with work. Like Rachaad White, he's not a great player to me, but he's second in the NFL he was tied second with CMC in total carries last year. Amazing amount of receiving work. And literally Jonathan Brooks is better at him in every respect of football to me.
Yeah.
And so I think that especially if like the Panthers if they're pushing for a playoff spot, it'll be like a really entertaining down the stretch move. But at least in fantasy, you gotta snag them, y'all. So that's all I got.
Will do.
Yeah. All right. So what? My question for you, man, as we wrap up, what's going on with our league, bro?
Man, I think it has something to do with what I said when I first came on. Things aren't very easy right now. So if it was like a better time, if we had like a 1996 economy going on in the States right now, other people would be willing to jump into the league and go ahead and get things popping. But it's like the hit to the integrity there of the league is just people aren't really paying attention. They aren't responding. They aren't even saying exactly what they would like to see change to get them involved. And my thing is this. You're going to wish you had fantasy football as soon as you got nothing going on. You want to go ahead and get into the conversation with people at work, people at the water cooler, people in passing. Maybe you got a really good team where you live. You want to be able to have some, what you feel like investment in there and be able to speak to it. I'm like, of course you guys are going to wish you did this when the time comes up. So I'm like, just let us know what's going on. And I mean, we've always had fun. I was actually feeling responsible because am I busting their ass too much, too frequently throughout the years when we play the games? You know what I'm saying? Do we do this too well? You know, I got to tip my hat to you, Toomey. You were like 3 seasons in a row going ahead and taking the championship. I'm like, maybe Toomey whipped them too bad. You know what I'm saying? Teams don't play, they got a chance. You need to feel some kind of opportunity to go ahead and play, and we just beat the motherfuckers down so bad, they just don't think they can do it. That's what I really think is happening. Given what happened with everything last year, they're like, well, this is my opportunity to just say, no, not this year. Yeah. That's what I.
Full disclosure, everyone, we're having issues with our main big money league and attendance. So we're probably, it looks like we're not doing the league. I just wanted to get that on record. So we're going to send them this clip and hopefully shame them into joining the league. If you guys have comments, you could also leave it for them too, saying, you're being soft, y'all being scared. Join the league. Stop pussing out. So you guys will leave those comments in the chat. Leave them in the comment section as well. But again, thank you, Eric, so much for hopping on. Next week, this is what the show is going to be. It's going to be because we don't have games next week. We're going to be talking about the preseason. There's going to be a lot of starters playing, so it's almost going to be like a trial run for the fantasy season going into Sunday. But then as the games really start to kick off, we're going to be talking through some of the draft tips that you should be doing next week. But once we get into the season, it's all football. We're going to be talking about what happened during those week's games, what we think is going to happen in the Sunday night game, the Monday night game. It's just going to be a really nice place. Like the second you turn off Red Zone, we're ready to go. We'll be ready to go and make it happen. So make sure you guys tune in. Next week, the show, again, is called Hits and Misses. And we'll see you next week. Peace out.
Peace.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.